A big weekend's coming up for the Maple Leafs, a back-to-back against the Montreal Canadiens and the Florida Panthers. We'll chat a little bit about my experience at the CHL Top Prospects Game, and then we're going to play a little bit of cosign, no sign on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 at Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother from TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, my co-host Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leafs-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts from. You can now catch us on YouTube as well. That is Locked On Leafs on YouTube, and we're more than halfway to our goal of 500 subs before we do our first giveaway, and then we do a massive giveaway or a bigger giveaway once we get to 1,000. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, and be involved and make yourself eligible for our prize giveaways. Should be a fun show, Dave. Should be a real fun show. It's been an interesting week for myself. I was, on vacation, then I come back and we got trade deadline on literally the next day. So that was a busy day. And then on Tuesday, I had to make my way down to Kitchener and so I could get to the Top Prospects game. Then on Wednesday was the game itself. I ran into Tony Ferrari, by the way, old pal. He was there. I figured he would be. We got to chat a little bit about some of the prospects, and then today, it was a long, long day. But here we are. This is the final thing that I got to check off my checklist for the day, and then I can go to sleep. So I'm jacked up for today's show, and I mean, it's a big weekend for the Maple Leafs too.
Oh, it's huge. It kind of snuck up on me a little bit because I knew they were playing on Montreal on Saturday. I didn't realize the Panthers were the next day. I knew they were playing the Panthers next, but I didn't realize it was on back-to-back nights. So
Yeah,
it's a weird week for the Leafs in that they're playing 3 games this week, but they're coming in 3 games in 4 days like that after having all that time off. It's such a weird thing, but a very exciting weekend if you're a Leafs fan, depending on who you ask.
well, what do you mean by that? I don't even know.
Well,
Exciting as in like it's going to be nerve wracking as well.
oh yeah, Montreal, while it is a
Dead last
fantastic
in the
environment,
NHL. Currently dead last in the NHL.
but not playing like it the last little while.
No.
If you're asking a lot of Habs fans as well, and if you go to the Locked On Canadiens podcast, they're sure having a little bit of fun with the Canadiens right now. But then it's also the Panthers, right? The team that's now seen as the juggernaut of the East after the deadline they just pulled off. This is the first time the Leafs are also playing the Panthers this season. So it's just
Yeah.
like I didn't realize like that was the other thing is like how do they go all the way till March to play an Atlantic Division rival?
Yeah, that's insane to me, the fact that the schedule was made and they legitimately just didn't play for the first half of the year, like more than the first half. Like now they gotta fit in 3 quick games here in the last month or so of the season, last 5 weeks of the season. And I mean, it's a good time for it to happen because, I mean, this is a good opportunity for Toronto, I guess, to close that gap with Florida in the division race. If you do want to still try and go for the division title, which I think they still want to do, get themselves home ice advantage for the first 2 rounds and have a better opportunity, I suppose, to avoid one of those Florida clubs if you can do it. That said, actually, I think as of now, we see Tampa sitting in fourth place right now. Boston leapfrogged them with a victory tonight as we record this at 11:30 on a Thursday. But yeah, I think that this is going to be a good tone setter, I guess, because we don't really know what this matchup looks like yet because we haven't seen it. We've talked about it a lot. We've worried about it a lot. We've worried about the team, the Florida Panthers, and they seem to have gotten better over the course of the last week or so. Obviously, the deadline, going and getting Ben Sherrod, going and getting Claude Giroux, Robert Hagg, they all made their debuts this week as well. So I mean, it's going to be a fun game just to see what it looks like. And look, Toronto typically plays up to their opponent, right? So
Oh
I
yeah.
think it'll be a real solid one. And here's the good thing: they're both on night two of a back to back. So although you got Montreal on Saturday, Florida on Sunday, Florida's got Ottawa on Saturday, which is a rugged team. So they may be able to tire them out a little bit. So you'll have two teams with some tired legs, and one team doesn't have that advantage of playing the second night of a back to back because they're both in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're the Leafs right now and you see what's going on in the Atlantic Division, I got your sights set on first place right now because it's not only could you potentially avoid Tampa in round one altogether, you can set yourself up for potentially a better matchup for the first round of the playoffs. And taking these games against Florida is going to be the prime way to do it. And nobody's expecting the Leafs to do it either. So I think this is Toronto's chance to kind of fly in a little bit under the radar. I mean, there's going to be a lot talked about this matchup and how the two teams match up against each other and all those things. But Toronto can fly under the radar a little bit here and really put themselves in an advantageous position after 3 weeks that people were very much concerned about what the prospects of the Leafs season was going to be like because of the goaltending situation and all those other things. It's a very interesting weekend coming up, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking now to see exactly how far off Toronto is.
Five,
I'm
5 points.
assuming this has been updated for tonight because
Yeah,
the Panthers beat Montreal 4-3, so they're now up to 92 points through 63 games. So they're 7 points up on the Maple Leafs,
7 points.
and yeah, so if the Leafs can go 3-0 in this series, I mean now you're only looking at a 1 point difference, but you start one game at a time, and you,
Yep.
you try and get that victory on Sunday and get the 2 points at the very least, close the gap to within five, and then you kind of keep chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. But before they get to Florida, Montreal is not going to be a cakewalk either, right? Like we can't really look past the Montreal Canadiens because every time we do that, or every time the Leafs do that, they don't end up walking away with a full 2 points. And we're at the time of the year where they cannot be giving up points to non-playoff teams. And not non-playoff teams, but basement dwellers, which is what the Montreal Canadiens are. Are they playing good hockey? Are they playing better than they were? Yes, there's certainly a much more competitive team than they were a few months back, and it's really coincided with the Marty St. Louis coaching change. And look, they just gave Florida a run for the money, 4-3, right? Like that's a very good, close, tight hockey game. So it's not going to be a walk in the park. It never is. Josh Anderson's going to be out there doing Josh Anderson things, unfortunately. But Toronto, you know, it's it's put up or shut up at this point. They went through that stretch where they were losing to a bunch of I don't want to call them. They're worse teams. You got to beat them. Teams that you got to beat, and they weren't. They weren't picking up those points. You can't do that down the stretch here at this point now. You got to start winning them, especially with Boston right on their heels and Tampa's there. So I think that both of these games are going to be super important in different ways. Which one to you would be would be a worse loss? Like, which one would hurt more, you think? A loss to Montreal, where it's like we lost to another. First of all, it's Montreal, so that
Yeah.
always sucks. But it's like we lost to them again, like another non-playoff team, or a loss to Florida. We're like, damn, now they are widening the gap even more in the divisional race. Like they both are gonna sting, but I'm curious which one you think would sting more.
I think, I mean, the Montreal one, people are going to probably point to that one because it's Saturday night. It means a lot more in those type of matchups. But let's say the Leafs beat the Panthers in overtime, right?
Mm,
And give Florida a point, or Florida is able to get a point, or the other way around. Like, I think the opportunity right there in your first matchup against a team that you're chasing, I think that one's still a crucial one, right? Because that's a team you're stacking up against, and it's gonna be a measuring stick game. So I feel like that one for me, just from a competitive standpoint, but from a purely emotional one, if they lay egg against the Habs on Saturday, that's not gonna be fun.
Yeah,
at
I'm with
all.
you. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you on that one. I was curious if maybe you would think the other one, but we're both on the same page for that. But the question is, I guess now is, how do you split up the goalies here, Dave? Who gets the Saturday night in Montreal, and then who you playing on the second night against the much better team in Florida?
You know what? I'm kind of on I've been really thinking about this, and I really do think it's got to be Shalgren against the Habs, purely because they haven't faced him yet. They faced Peter Mrazek, and they lit him up the last time they played against him. So
Oh,
throw out the guy who
who
hasn't played him yet, and
outside
maybe
of New Jersey who
yeah,
hasn't lit up Peter Mrazek in the
yeah,
last 3 months?
yeah. I mean, exact. But the point here is that you're trying, and also I think the Florida one, like usually people are just like you play your starter. Well, at this point, we at least don't really have a bona fide starter yet. But they always say play him on the first night. But we've seen Sheldon Keefe go the opposite way. He's kind of thought a little bit more about the matchup, and I think he's going to think about that going into that Panthers game. And I think I'd rather see Shalgren go up against the Habs than see him go up against the Panthers.
I I'm almost 50-50, but since I hate being on the fence, I'll kind of tilt towards one cheek here. I think I go Mrazek. You
Hmm.
know, he just came off of one of his better performances, I guess you could say, in the last little while. Only allowed 2 goals, and both of them, you're not going to fault him on either. Like they were, the first one was a deflection. The second one kind of, your defense didn't clear the garbage, didn't box out, and didn't do their job either. So I think that giving him another opportunity to kind of build off of that and try and get that confidence back, that's a sound opportunity to do it against Montreal. Like throwing him out to the wolves to Florida might not be a very simple task there. Like
I think
I
either you
see
can go
that.
either way for sure. Like if they
Well,
do,
say you could say the exact same thing about Shalgren.
yeah,
Realistically, I mean, you want to throw a 25-year-old rookie against one of the top. I mean, the top dog in the division. You can say the same thing, but I think it's certainly more imperative for Mrazek to find success, find a rhythm, gain confidence than it is for Eric Shalgren.
yeah, no, I could see that for sure. I think that's partially why they got Mrazek back in after Shalgren lost the last game. Like they do want to get Mrazek going. They're not pushing him to the side at all. Like they
No.
want to get him going. So I can see why that makes sense.
Well, there was an interesting comment actually that was made by Chris Johnston today on Overdrive. He may have brought it up on his own show as well. I'm gonna dig into it a little bit more on Leafs Lunch tomorrow. We'll have him on, and I want to ask him about it, just see if we can expand. But he kind of threw out the fact that like when Muzzin and Jack Campbell get back, this team will be back into like a pretty big cap crunch. Um, and Peter Mrazek could find himself back on waivers, or not on waivers, but back in the minors just to get them cap compliant. He said, he also did clarify and say, look, Brandon Pridham is a genius capologist, so maybe there's something up their sleeve that I don't know about that wouldn't make that happen. But he said he wouldn't be surprised if the rest of the way, if when Jack Campbell's healthy and Muzzin and they have everybody back, if indeed um, it's the Shalgren and Campbell show down the road, and then in the playoffs you can bring him back up once the cap is no longer a thing. Which a little bit later in the show we'll have a discussion. That is also going to be a point of conversation at next week's GM meetings, but that is for later in the show. Coming up next, I want to get into my experience at the CHL Top Prospects Game actually, because it was a lot of fun. I know you wanted to ask me about it too, so why don't we get into that, and then we'll play some cosine no sign as well. But before we get there, Dave, why don't you tell us about our good friends over at Built Bar?
Yes, sir. It's obviously that time of year where we're trying to stick to our New Year's resolutions. I know it's hard. I'm trying my best to, continue to eat right. Built Bar has helped with that. The times where I get that craving, can get one of those Built Bars. If you go with the Puffs, which are their first ever protein infused marshmallow, they're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. Not just a protein bar, they're also a treat. covered in 100% real chocolate. You can get some incredible flavors like yummy cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. I'm telling you, these are all going to be your new favorites. At Built Bar, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate, low calorie, high protein. You can replace your candy bars with these. They have many other flavors, of course, like mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream, which is another one of my favorites. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. They always try to find a way to make it taste delicious first and also make it healthy. And I don't know about you, they pull it off every time. So make sure you go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Well, welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti here with Mike DiStefano. Now, what was the coach? What did the guys at the Top Prospects game call you? Did they call you AB? Did they call you Al's brother, Coach AB? How were you referred at this Top Prospects game? Oh, you're on
Just
mute.
taking myself off mute before I start to talk there. There was some Al's brother being thrown around, but I also just didn't get much, there wasn't much reference to my name. You know when you get into where it's just you're talking directly to people, but you don't actually have to use their name. I feel like that actually happened more than my name getting used. Now that I think about it, I never thought about it, but now maybe a couple of times I was referred to as Al's brother, more so by the rest of the coaching staff. Or George Burnett called me Mike quite a bit. I think he respected my given birth
I am
name.
not calling you Al's brother.
Yeah, I mean, he did a couple times. When I went to go and address the team, he gave his quick speech, and then he was like, all right, now Al's brother going to give you guys a starting lineup. Here we go. And then that was, I think, maybe the one time he ever called me Al's brother. But overall, it was a fun experience, though. I mean, I've never done anything like that, obviously, and I don't know if I'll ever get to do something like that again. Be a part of a TSN and CHL broadcast, the way that it went down. I was literally on the bench with the top prospects in the country who are going to get drafted this year. It was an ultra cool experience, honestly.
I got a couple questions about that game. First and foremost, you're coming in not only as a representative of TSN, but low key, the Leafs have a first round pick here. I think we've been doing a little bit of scouting for the Leafs in this game. Who caught your eye in this game, whether on your team or on Team Red?
Look, I may have ran into somebody who has significant power within the Maple Leafs organization while I was down there, while I was in Kitchener at the Odd. His name may rhyme with Schmeil Pubis. And I did not give him, and it was before the game. I just kind of a little stop and chat. And it was funny actually, because I don't know, O took me up there and he was like, oh, Kyle, we went into the suite, shook hands or whatever, said hello, just didn't really talk about much, just kind of introduce each other, took a photo together. But he was saying that, so my co-host on Leafs Lunch, Julia Teixeira, interviewed him earlier in the day for a panel for the CHL. And I guess she asked him, because we were talking about it on the lunch earlier that day. He's like, I got to ask you this. By chance, do you know who Al's brother is? And apparently his response was, of course I know who Al's brother is. Everyone in hockey knows who it is. So when I rolled up there, he was like, I was offended that Julia asked me. Of course I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. It's like, damn. All right. Far reach. Look at that. So that was pretty cool. Then we had to snap a pic together. And I meant to tell him. And if I could go back and, when you're just, I don't say, I wasn't nervous, but I was I didn't know what was going on, to be honest. I wasn't expecting it. If I was going back, I should have given him my number and been like, hey, if you need any notes or whatever for the draft, I got you, because I'm going to be taking notes on these kids. So to get back to your answer, I didn't give him my card. I should have. Maybe I could go through some channels and get him my information in case he wants it. He seems to be a guy who likes to pick up a lot of information in a lot of different ways. And what I would tell him is there was a couple of players that caught my eye. The problem is you don't know where they're going to draft quite yet. But one of the top kids, really for me, who I think is going to move up some draft boards, is a defenseman, Tristan Leno from the QMJHL. He's a super good kid, man, and he's got a good frame to him. He's like 6'2" or so, right hand shot, like a two-way defenseman. He's just super smart, made some simple plays, good reads. He's a good skater and very vocal and like a leader on the bench too. So if I could tell him, like, hey man, if you're sitting there late in the first round, or if you're sitting there and you move back into early in the second round and he's still there, that's a name who I think that you might want to keen in on, because we all know that they could use some extra defensive prospects. They could use them, especially on the right side. So that's a name. Tristan Leno is somebody who I fancy, someone I appreciated and really loved his game. Another one is Jagger Furcus, who ended up getting MVP for Team White for our squad. That kid's unbelievable. He's tiny though. He's like 150 pounds soaking wet.
Prime Leafs draft pick right there. That's who they are.
Right? Like this kid, legitimately, that's exactly what he is. He's like SDA. Like, I remember SDA was drafted at like 150 pounds or something like that, and they're like, this dude is tiny. So that's like Jagger Furcus, but this guy's got wheels and he's got skill, man. Like, he made a couple of plays last night to get open, find space. Like, you talk about what like skilled players do to find time and space. Guys like Mitch Marner, not to say that he's Mitch Marner, but guys like that who get themselves open. He was making a couple of plays like that, just dragging the puck into some open soft pockets and then getting shots on goal. Ended up being, like I said, team MVP for the winning team, our team. So there's another kid that I really liked.
So my other question here from all this, I mean, you got to do a lot of stuff there between the pregame skate. You got all decked out in your nice suit with the fedora.
You like that?
Nice little touch. I know we discussed it, and I said you had to do it, and you pulled that was pretty swanky on your part.
So that was a big talking point where like a lot of people came up to me and they're like, bro, that hat just pulls that outfit together. That's fire. But afterwards, I had this lady come up to me and she's like, I need to take a photo with you. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. I thought like at first she was a fan or whatever. And then she's like, we're both wearing hats. And I was like, oh, okay, sure, taking the photo. And then she proceeds to say, I'm a big fan of the show, big fan of you and the boys. I'm not, the massive sports fan, but like your show's just so funny and relatable. And it was really cool. Met a couple of fans down there and some kids who kept yelling, oh, O-Dog, Al's brother, and some people banging on the glass behind the bench trying to get some picks and just get a wave or whatnot. So that was really fun. But to go back to the outfit, did you hear about my mishap?
Oh, I heard about it. I heard.
So for those who did not hear, I kind of spilled this story earlier on Leafs Lunch. While I was getting dressed and getting changed, I was, I buttoned up my pants perfectly fine, which it doesn't always happen when you're putting suit on. You're like, suck it in, let's get it in there. All right, we're good. And then I just daintily went to go and pull up the zipper to finish off the outfit, and somehow I pull this thing clean off of the track. And I'm sitting there, wide open barn door, and I'm like holding the zipper in my hand. I'm like, can I fix this? Like, what the hell do I do? I'm about to go on live national television in front of thousands of people inside the Odd, in front of all these kids, and my fly's gonna be down the whole time. I have no zipper. I can't close it. And I was just like, it was running through my head the entire night. I did my best to like bring it close together, then like did a little bit of a tuck under the belt to try to hold it all together and bunch it kind of. And apparently nobody really noticed, which was I was hoping for. But yeah, I had anxiety throughout the night, thinking that someone was peeping through the barn door at some point throughout the whole night. And I'm like looking down, checking down to make sure that we were all good. But yeah, that was my wardrobe malfunction. That wasn't cool.
If I was there and if I knew about your predicament, you are in a hockey arena with trainers and who have all these little supplies. Nice
Yeah.
little, like a safety pin or a little pin might have helped you in that scenario. But I know.
Hold on. I thought about that, Dave. Okay. Do you really want to put a safety pin in that area?
I've done it before.
Yeah, you didn't get juked anywhere. That's my biggest worry. Like I thought
You
about
gotta
that.
be
I'm sitting there,
very,
I'm like,
very careful.
if
I
I
totally
move,
get,
like
I totally
if
get the hesitation in that moment, but I'd rather take the chance with the safety pin than national TV. Someone go, hey, you got a little situation going on down there.
you're flying low, pal. Yeah, thanks, because my fly's broken. I can't zip it up. Move on. Like,
Now, did this
ugh.
happen before the epic pregame speech?
Yeah,
Don't-
yeah, that happened when I put the suit on.
Oh
So yes,
God.
it did happen before. So I was flying low during the speech and all. Yeah.
I wonder if any of the players are just like, buddy's got his fly open. Do we tell him? Do we tell him?
Well, that's what I
No.
was wondering. I'm like, either no one noticed or people noticed and didn't want to tell me because they didn't want to embarrass me. And either way, I sat there as a ball of anxiety the whole time, thinking people probably notice, regardless if they're saying anything or not. But Julia said that she would have told me if she had noticed, and she said she didn't. She was down there with me, so hopefully that's that's what happened, and no one really actually noticed because that would have been embarrassing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And let's go into this. I mean, it was a talk of a lot of people after the fact that this was maybe the reason why your team pulled away with the victory. I saw the contrasting pregame lineups and starting speech. Team Red, man, Noodles and Hayes got outclassed.
Well, I mean, hey, look, they went a different route, right?
They
Like
did.
they're all business. They're all business and they're taking it seriously. And hey, that's one way to do it. I wanted to loosen these kids up. It's an all-star game at the end of the day. It's hockey.
Yep.
It's fun. Go out there, have fun. But at the same time, you knew that it was a big deal too. So I wanted to rile them up and really get the adrenaline pumping. And that's what I was trying to do. And ultimately, you look at the score at the end of the game. I think I might have been able to do that. Craig Button said that I set the tone. That's what Craig J. Button said. I set the tone of that game, and it carried through, and Team White came out victorious. Team Aldog came out
Yeah.
victorious.
So if you didn't see it before the game, well, it was happened during the broadcast that they showed it, but before the game, there's a set, the pregame, get everyone fired up with the lineup announcements. It kind of gets the teams all going there. Our boy here, Mr. Mike, decided to take it up a notch in a great way and to do a nice pregame, get all the boys involved too. So I got it queued here. So let me pull that up here. So for those on YouTube, you're gonna see it. Those of you listening on the podcast, you'll still be able to hear it. It's still gonna be great audio and visually. So let me
Everyone's
pull
just
that
gonna
up.
look for the fly. Everyone's just looking to see if they
You
can
know what?
fly on YouTube.
Honestly, I don't know if that's shown. We'll see it. I guess that's gonna be something everybody's gonna be looking at during this whole thing. But just keep your ears peeled. If you're listening on the podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, let's watch this glorious player introduction, our starting lineup introduction from our good old Mike DiStefano.
All right, fellas, ready to have some fun? Yeah. Give me one of these. Ready? All right. Starting on the left wing, we got number 19, Paul Whiskey. In the middle, we got number 28 from the Winnipeg Ice, Connor Geeky. On the right wing from the Ottawa 67, number 23, Vincent Rower. On the blue line, we're going out west to the Moose Jaw Warriors, number 5, Jason Matejka. And his partner, number 27 of the Swift Current Broncos, Owen Pickering. And starting between the points from Prince George, we got Tyler Brennan. There it is. There it is.
Like Look,
a pump up.
and Mike, I know that before your time at TSN, you have done some play-by-play. You've got your. This is not out of character for you. You've got experience in all this. So when I
I've
saw
never done anything like that though.
no,
That was different, right? That was different for sure. I kind of pulled that out of my ass, to be honest. But you know where the inspiration from that came from? Two things, actually. I realized it afterwards. Kind of. So the first inspiration of that was like this part, right? That was,
yeah,
remember Marty St. Louis when he did that during his starting lineup, like a few years back when he was with the Rangers? There's a clip. You're gonna have to go and check it out. That was kind of like my inspiration for it. I remember he doing it and it got all the boys pumped up, and it was like, yeah, let's go. So I wanted to get the boys doing the. So I got that going. And then I don't know, I kind of just went in a different direction. It kind of sounded like WWE style, or almost kind of like the way that the Raptors do it too.
yeah. I was
You
gonna
know,
say that that's very much reminiscent of like the Raptors. I've seen things like that before in the dressing room where they get like like they get the kid coming in
oh,
to
Coach
like
Cal.
Coach Cal has
He
done
followed me
stuff
on Twitter today, funny enough.
Oh,
Yeah.
he
Or
was also
whoever
present at
whoever runs his account followed me on Twitter.
yeah, he was out there for
The next
the
gen game.
Leafs next gen game. He got the crowd all started up
Next
as well.
generation coach. Next generation coach.
Man, I'm telling you, this kid's got a bright future. He's whether it's doing this for the rest of his life, he's got something there. But
It's the point. Get the point in there, and you gotta do it, and you can do it.
he also
Oh
fired
yeah,
up you guys for NHL Trade Center as well. Like he was
yeah,
there
he
as
did.
well. Like
He did.
he's had a very busy week for himself. I'm
Hey, the kid
surprised he
was on
wasn't there.
Ellen like a month ago. Remember?
Oh yeah.
Ellen.
Oh yeah, this is not a part-time gig for this kid anymore. This is like
No.
his job now.
Yeah.
So, but no, I fantastic job with that. And like it must have been hard like knowing that the camera's rolling too to like know all right, like this has got to be like big time. This can't
So
be.
that's the thing, right? So it's like, my voice can't crack here. Like my voice couldn't crack. Like that was the one thing that's going through my mind. And the second thing is, I got to keep up this energy the whole time, right? Like I can't fizzle out like after four names. Like I got to keep it going, keep the energy for like that entire minute, and just keep belting it and screaming it. Had to change inflections a couple of times to make it a little unique for each player, and it was kind of like off the cuff. Like I never actually like rehearsed it or anything like that. Like I was just live, boom, and that's what I did. But it was yeah, it was really fun, and the kids seemed to enjoy it, and like they were just bunch of smiles and stuff while it was happening, and some laughs, and they went out and had a terrific game afterwards. And I'd like to think that kind of pregame lineup situation kind of had something to do with it.
I think I'm also wondering how your voice was after that. Luckily, you didn't have to do a lot of talking after that, I guess.
I didn't have to, but I was a little vocal on the bench, a little bit. Not like in a constructive criticism way, but like, oh, good stick there, pal. Hey, way to be, way to stand him up. Hey, nice hit. Good shot, good shot. Oh, good. I was just kind of pointing out all the good plays that the kids were making. So, but yeah, it was a fun. O'Neal, on the other hand, O-Dog, that guy, very vocal behind the bench. He was giving it to the refs at one point, like
Oh.
literally giving it to the refs on at least two or three occasions. At least two or three occasions, he's just like, "Hey, McPhee, it's 4-0 in the penalties. What the hell? We got one. You owe us one." It's like, what? It's like, Shawzy,
Hey.
come on, get us a penalty at some point, will ya? Like, dude.
Hey, you guys also had a little bet going on there. I can understand why O-Dog was a little fired up.
Absolutely. And Hayes and Noodles will have to make us a charcuterie, and the golf will happen. I don't know if golf's probably between those two, but I'll be pleasantly pleased with a nice fat charcuterie board delivered to me in studio. That'll make me happy.
Oh, I mean, it just looked like a fun thing to be a part of. Unfortunately, I had to kind of take the reins here on the podcast, which I have no problem doing. Got to keep our faithful listeners going.
I will say one thing about actually, you know what? No, because I just remembered it's part of my cosine no sign. So how about
We'll take a break.
we take a break and we get back? That'll be the first cosine no sign that I ask. It's about that game. It's about that game.
All right.
All right, let's take a break. And before we do, let's hear from one of our favorite show sponsors, and that's betonline.net. BetOnline, it's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and information. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering informational needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games, and that also includes hockey. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. I've got Dave Morassutti with me. We are your hosts of the Locked On Leafs pod, a daily Maple Leafs-centric podcast, a great listen for all Leaf fans. So if you are a diehard Leaf fan and you claim to be one, well, you better subscribe because that's the best way to show it, to get that daily Leafs content directly to your phone. You could also check us out through video on YouTube as well. Locked On Leafs on YouTube. You can go subscribe there. All right, Dave. One of our best segments, one of the most fun segments that we get to do on this show is Cosine No Sign. If you guys are new to the podcast, we like to play it every now and then, at least once a week, and we haven't been able to do it this week. It's been a little bit busy. So we're going to do it today. Cosine No Sign. We'll both make a statement. So I'll make a statement. If Dave agrees with it, he'll co-sign it. If he disagrees, he'll no-sign it, vice versa. And like I said, I'll start things off because it has to do with the game on Wednesday. First and foremost, those jerseys were sharper on the ice than they were off the ice. And I loved them off the ice as well. I thought they were so sick. And then I saw them in game, and I'm like, these are even better than they looked in the photos. So that's first and foremost. I want to see those stay. My cosine no sign for you is the Toronto Maple Leafs should have reversed the next gen jersey for the third period like they did in D2 Mighty Ducks.
Oh, you're bringing back a big part of my childhood. Like Mighty Ducks was one of my favorite movies growing up, and like when those Ducks, I have one of those Ducks, not that exact one, but I have like that era of Ducks jerseys. Man, you know what? I did
Remember the
think
scene like after the second period, like they're Team USA, right? Through the in D2, and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden, like they're
Mighty Ducks.
down, and then they take it off, they toss on the Mighty Ducks jersey, and they skate out for the third period, and then they play better and win the game. You know, a Disney fairy tale ending. Imagine they switch them and put on the Justin Bieber Drews for the third period. Like, what's the point of having a reversible jersey if you're not going to do it?
So I only think of two reasons why. I would have liked to. It would have been interesting to see if they tried it for one period
That
or
is
even
so
for part of
sick.
the period. I think the problem is that the numbers would have been a little bit harder to read. I don't know
Oh,
how I couldn't. I saw when Mitch Marner went out for his like to do the 3 stars.
yeah.
I couldn't really see the back of the jersey. I know that's one, but I don't know how the design was on the back. I've only seen the front of the jersey.
Well, that seems like a problem for Bonesy and
Yeah,
DC.
but you know what? I thought it would have been nice to have seen the other side of it because yeah, they talked a lot about
At the very least, warm up. Why not for warm ups?
yeah. I agree with that.
At the very least.
And it would have been a lot easy just take it off, reverse it, put it on, all good and done.
All good, but no. Sadly, no. Canada just lost to Costa Rica. Got
I
the
know.
final right there. So upsetting. So upsetting.
Not as upsetting as our Azuri, Mike.
Let's just not talk about that because now that's just two bad things in a row. Two bad things in a row. All right, let's get back into the cosine no sign. You got your first one here, pal.
All right. I know we're gonna be talking about going into one of your cosign no signs will delve into this a little bit more. I got a different approach to this. The NHL should consider imposing a luxury tax.
Ooh, cosign. Absolutely. Especially as like a team that a person that covers the Maple Leafs for a living, because they're one of the teams that would use the luxury tax and go into luxury tax to make sure they had the best squad because they can afford it. Realistically, absolutely. I mean, I you look at the NBA and you look at what that soft cap system allows them to do in terms of like player movement and the amount of buzz that that generates. Why doesn't the NHL want that? Like, I just don't understand why they don't want that. And it's a luxury tax system. It's a soft cap system. Like, I understand if you want to keep the salary cap around, and if a team wants to go into luxury tax and pay extra money to do so, allow them to.
Yeah.
Like, why not? Everyone's getting their money, right? Like the teams like Toronto will be paying extra into the bonus pool, into the what's the word that everyone hates, into the escrow, right? And it should even everything out in the end. The NBA has a pretty good system when it comes to what's going on with their cap. Now, there's far less players, which makes it a little difficult, but look at the contracts. You have guys making 30, $40 million a year.
Yeah.
Most of them, to be honest with you. At this point, it's kind of ridiculous. You got bench players making Connor McDavid money in the NBA. But anyway, cosign, absolutely. I would love for the NHL to do something like that. Yeah.
And quickly, there's only two reasons why I want the NHL to get a luxury tax system. I am tired of NHL teams having to trade away good players because they're being punished for having good teams with good players that don't fit the current economics of the NHL. That's
Well, so there's two ways you can look at that.
Yeah.
If it's if you're drafted and developed, I hate it. If you're Vegas, where you just went out and just like spent a whole shart ton of money and just said, we'll go buy this guy, trade for this guy, we'll figure it out down the road. And then you're in a situation like they're in right now, which I guess we'll get into this in just a moment. Then it's like, I don't feel bad if you have to trade somebody away because you were just being reckless with your cap space anyway. It's not like, the Maple Leafs the Maple Leafs are a different situation because they recklessly went out and signed John Tavares. But, think of another team like the Blackhawks back in the day when they were winning their cups, right? Like this was a team that was drafted and developed into Stanley Cup winners. Then every time they won a cup, they had to shed salary. They had to get rid of guys.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense. It's like, no, they drafted well, they developed well, and now they're being punished for it. It's just so silly. And that's when you look at the NBA, they also have the bird rights, right? Where if you can sign for extra money for your player. Now the NHL tried something like that where you can sign them to an 8-year extension where if they go to free agency, they can only get a 7th year. So you can make a little bit more total value if you want to sign them to the full 8-year term. Happened with Morgan Riley, they signed to the full 8-year term. But often, once you get up in that age range, you don't really want to sign guys to 8 years, to be quite honest with you, for most of them. But yeah, so there's pros and cons to it, I would say.
And the other reason why I also brought it up is because it doesn't guarantee. I know like teams that are lower are going to be like, oh, that means the top teams are going to be running roughshod and everyone. Not necessarily the case. We see teams recklessly spend. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have a good team. I think that's the other thing that needs to be. And we're seeing now more so than ever, players' desires aren't just about which teams they're going to and the money they're being paid. In the Evgeny Dadonov situation, this was about also how much money am I giving away in taxes and all those other things. We're seeing Toronto not being a Canadian teams being less desirable for that reason.
Yeah.
So I think people also need to realize that the Leafs aren't just going to be signing a bunch of players just because they have the ability to then go over the cap as well.
And another reason why a soft cap and the option, I guess, to go into luxury tax makes sense because just based on geography, there are certain cities that team players don't want to sign in because of the money situation. So the only way to do that is to give them more money to level out the playing field. But when it's a hard cap, it actually hinders a lot of these Canadian clubs. Whereas you look at Florida and Tampa, the reason why Kucherov, the reason why Point, the reason why Stamkos, the reason why Vasilevsky are all signed for such
Right.
cheap contracts is because it's tax-free. That you can't do that in Toronto. You can't do that in a bunch of these other states and a bunch of these other provinces. So that at least the luxury tax, I guess to go back to the first question, kind of evens out that uneven playing field a little bit. And that brings us to my next one here, which this is kind of a question about Evgeny Dadonov in a way, and that trade was officially voided yesterday. Dadonov ends up back with the Vegas Golden Knights. That trade does not go through. I think he ended up actually scoring a
He
goal.
scored.
He scored a goal in his first game tonight back with them, and they tweeted out, "Yeah, thanks for coming back, Evgeny." Sticky situation. But anyways, it turns out that the NHLPA is thinking about, they're at least going to discuss this at the GM meetings next year, potentially implementing a playoff cap as well to get rid of this LTIR loophole, I suppose, that some teams are trying to finagle. Call it the Kucherov rule, the Kane rule, the Mark Stone rule. Seems to be what's going on here. Let's not use the circumventing rule, but it's yeah, I'm not going to use it, but you know what I'm thinking. The question for Cosign No Sign: the NHLPA and the NHL and the owners will absolutely approve a playoff cap in the next few seasons.
I'm going to sign this one because I think more teams are now getting fed up with this idea of using the LTIR situation. And I also think the NHLPA won't like this idea of players being potentially held out. And this impacts bonuses if players are left out of the lineup. Let's say a guy.
Well, so it does, but if someone's got a bonus coming up, like if there are performance bonuses, you would have to think that the player has to be on board too.
Yeah.
Right? So if they're going to miss out on a couple $1,000,000 because they're held out and they won't meet bonuses, they're probably not going to be on board. So I don't know if I would read into that.
I'm just curious to see the NHLPA getting involved too. I think will really push this into actually happening versus I think a lot of other GMs are
Should
also
it happen? Should it happen, Dave?
I think it should. I think if you're gonna have a salary cap for the regular season, you gotta keep it in the playoffs too. And I know people are gonna say, well, the players don't get paid in the playoffs. That doesn't matter. The roster you construct has to be good during regular season games. Why should that change during the playoffs? And I get, oh well, the player's injured. They're trying to replace him. Well, that player's gonna eventually come back, unless that player is deemed like there's like in the NFL, there's like a specific IR designation where they're not coming back at all, and then they
Right.
get the cap space. I think maybe that's something the
Well, that would be
NHL.
it. Like you can toss them on LTIR,
Yeah,
right? In the same way that it works for the NHL. The problem is when you're put on IR, you're out for X amount of games, right?
exactly.
Whereas, you're in a situation where, and it happened to the Maple Leafs earlier this season, where they ran into, an injury here and there, but then also COVID at the time was running amok, and it got to a situation where they had to play shorthanded. You don't want to get in a situation like that in the playoffs. And
No.
that's what potentially could happen here if you implement a playoff cap. And that's kind of the worry that I think I would have with it, where you just don't want to have that even be an option in the Stanley Cup playoffs. In the regular season, a random Tuesday night in November, it sucks. We're going to talk about it for the day, but then who cares? At the end of it, I'm not worried that they had to play with, 11 forwards, or I'm not worried that we had to have that, random goaltender sit on the bench for that game. Like, is what it is. But if it's a Stanley Cup playoff game, and it doesn't matter what game it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, heaven forbid game 7, you got to play shorthanded. That's like I'm not okay with that. I don't think.
So here's a workaround. You have a Black Aces group that skates with your team the whole playoffs, similar to the tax squad where they don't count against the cap. You make it so that those players they come in at a certain cap hit. So you can't put like a $15 million player on the Black Aces. And if you're shorthanded, you call them up from the Black Aces, and there you go. Then you're not playing shorthanded.
Well, I think they would do that regardless. I mean,
That would be the way that
problem
you
is,
can get
can you even
around.
afford that though? Like, if you're right up against the cap, like the Maple Leafs last year finished the season what, like $5,000 under the cap.
Yep.
So if you're there and you have you don't put out on LTIR because they're just missing one game, there's nobody with a $5,000 cap that you can call up. So you can't do that unless somehow they finagle rules where you can put people on IR for like a game,
That's gonna have
and
to be where
you can make an emergency recall without having to play a game shorthanded, which I've always thought is stupid. But
I'm not a fan. Yeah, I'm not a fan of if a player's not able to play, and you can definitely question like if he's definitely not able to play. No team should ever have to play shorthanded because that's where injuries can happen.
right,
That's where you get into a situation where you have to bring in a goaltender who's never played in the NHL before into a game. Totally against that. I just think there are ways that you can make it work so that you don't play shorthanded, but you're also not going $10 million over the salary cap as well. There are ways to do it, I think. They just got to get a little creative once in a while. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
think
I don't know if you can accrue cap space in the playoffs like you can in the regular season though to get creative. That's the only thing. So I don't know. We'll see. It should be an interesting conversation. The GM meeting next week in Florida in Boca Raton. They're going to be chatting about it. They're going to be talking about it, and we'll keep you updated when we hear more on these suggestions. Not something that's going to come and be implemented this year anyway. This is a future situation. They're just going to talk about it, and sometimes it never reaches past the discussion phase anyway. And this is all just hogwash discussion. But hey, that's what podcasting is for, and talk radio is for, to talk about potentials, not always not always legitimate. No, what's the word I'm looking for? Not legitimacy, but
reality.
true realities. Maybe, yeah, realities, I think, is the word that I'm looking for here. All right. You're on your second or third?
Second.
Okay, boy, we're
gonna
taking a
rip
long
through
time.
these. Austin Matthews does not reach 60 goals this season. I hate to say it. He's at 46 right now, and the Leafs have 19 games left.
So can he score 14 in 19 games? Wow. That suspension really kind of put a damper on that 60 goal race, huh? Gosh. Like it was almost a lock.
It was almost, I would say if he didn't miss those 2 games, he did score in his first game back too. That was the annoying part too.
Did. I'm gonna be optimistic and say cosign, because like Austin's a guy who, like, when he scores in bunches. So if we got 19 games to go, I could definitely see him rattling off 16, 17 goals in these final games down the stretch. These games mean something, and I think Austin is just like a matured player, and I think he knows there's some big time matchups, some big divisional games coming up where he's going to have to step up. So I think he does it. I'm going to co-sign it, Dave.
Oh, you're going to actually no sign it because I don't know if he's going to do it. So you're going to no sign and say he does do it.
Oh, you're saying?
I'm not saying I don't think it's possible for him to do it. So you're no signing it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, then yeah, I'm going to no sign it. I think he still can hit 60. Yes.
Very good. All right. What's your last one?
The Maple Leafs will avoid a Florida team in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
See, I was thinking about this as the Leafs getting the Bruins in round 1. I'm going to sign it. I feel like these two teams, we haven't heard much about them. I feel like there might be a collision course between the Leafs and Bruins right now. It's right now. That's where it sits.
Sadly, I would prefer the Bruins over Tampa. And some people don't. Like, I've had conversations where it's like, which team would you rather? And literally the last team on their list is the Bruins. So like, too many skeletons there. I just don't want to relive that again. I can't handle another Game 7 loss to the Boston Bruins. I just can't handle it. I can, because I think you're not going to see another Game 7 loss to the Boston Bruins. I think it would be a Game 7 win against the Boston Bruins, and you'd be far more likely to beat Boston than you would to Florida or Tampa. So I hope this is the case, but I personally would no sign this. I still think that there's a stronger possibility that they play one of these Florida teams and they end up in the. I mean, even if they end up in first, like right now, if they leapfrog Florida, right? Tampa could have the fourth spot like they do right now.
Yeah, I know. That's the tough part right there. This is what I'll say about the Bruins. The Bruins are getting the only thing that worries me about the Bruins is that they got a really hot goaltender right now in Jeremy Swayman.
Yeah.
Whether he can keep this pace up the rest of the season, still undetermined. But I'm looking at this Bruins lineup. The Leafs match up way better depth wise than I think the Bruins do. And that's where I'm more on like I would prefer the Bruins. But as in your part of your question, I still think Tampa is going to get their S together, and Florida are not going to lose out on the top three. So I don't see the Leafs dropping below the wild card, below the
No.
top three. I don't see them going into the wild card. I also just it's going to be tough to see Tampa stick in there unless they continue playing like the way they have been, which has gotten them into the situation. But I just don't see Tampa getting to that point.
No, if I had to put money on it, it's like Florida, Tampa, Toronto will finish out with the 3 divisional spots, and Boston probably outside looking in with a wild card. That's how I think it ends up shaking out when all said and done. All right, give me your final cosign, no sign, Dave.
Final cosign, no sign is we see a defensive pairing at one point this season of Jake Muzzin and Ilya Lyubushkin.
You guys brought this up on the podcast yesterday, did you not?
We kind of threw it out there, but I really wanted to expand on this because a friend of mine also brought this idea up, and he just thinks it would be a very interesting idea.
It would be a mean pairing for sure.
Especially in like late in the game, shut down, you need to just keep the 1-goal lead or something like that.
Like, it would just be one that you definitely don't wanna play against in terms of it'll be tough to get to the net.
Yeah.
We'll say that. They'll be able to keep the net clear with those 2 big boys having some very active sticks, and I don't mean along the ice, I mean along the back. So, I think it would be an interesting pairing. My only thing is it kind of depends on how the other pairings shake out. Like, if we see Muzzin Lyubushkin, it's probably only because Lyubushkin didn't like work well with Riley.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, it sounds like those two are playing pretty well together. So I would say those two are still golden. And then Brody and
Brody,
Hall
Riley.
Well, Brody and Hall are currently playing. So
Yeah.
the only way they see it happening is if they put, I guess, Riley and Brody back together, and they could go Giordano and Hall, and then Muzzin Lyubushkin. So it's not impossible for that to happen. Do I think we'll see it? Here's a question. Do we just need to see it happen? Or, like, is this a permanent pairing for multiple games?
I just want to see it happen. That's where I'm
Okay,
going.
I'll co-sign it. I think for at least one game, I think we could see it happen. Yeah, I'll co-sign it. Do I think it'll be a permanent thing? I don't know. But at least for one game, we might see an experiment with those two on the back end.
I just want to see
lumber. Oh,
I just want to see the chaos. I just want to see the other teams.
They'll play. They'll literally sit there and just play like ping pong with each other.
Here, you hit him. No, you hit him. No, you hit him. You hit him.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
take him. You got him.
Pinball, ping pong, pinball, whichever one of those works for you. But yeah, I'll co-sign it. I think we could see it at some point.
All right, that was my final one.
There it is. Those are all 3 of our cosign no signs. Oh, I might have to rip that and do that into 2 separate epis because now we're climbing up to an hour here.
We just
on
love
the
enough
podcast. It's time for bed. It's been a long day, Dave. It's been a long day. All right.
We got a busy weekend.
We got a busy weekend. 2 games. Tomorrow night, Montreal hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs at Les Centres de Bell. And then the Leafs back in Toronto, hosting the Florida Panthers at Scotiabank Arena, their first meeting of the season. I don't understand how we're basically into April, the final month of the regular season, and they have yet to play a division rival. It is insane, but few games here down the stretch, and these are going to be important matchups between Toronto and Florida. And they'll get their first one this Sunday. Two big wins. Let's hope for 4 points out of the weekend. Keep it rolling off of that good win against the New Jersey Devils. That's going to do it for us here today on the pod, Dave. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasts and platforms to receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show at Locked On Leafs on Twitter. You can also subscribe to Locked On Leafs on YouTube. All right, enjoy the weekend, folks. Enjoy the games. We'll be back with another episode on Monday. And we'll be, I guess, teeing up both of the Montreal and Florida games. So that'll be a busy show, fun show. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.